Good evening. My name's Simone Clarke. I am the Chief Executive Officer for UN Women Australia, and we're delighted you could join us this evening. I'm joining you this evening from the land of the Ngunnawal people, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I join you on. We're absolutely delighted to announce today the theme for our International Women's Day 2023, which is short title, Cracking the Code, Working Towards a Gender Equal Future. And innovation is a key driver in that. This is the first of what we hope will be a series of conversations with innovators, pioneers, and amazing women who are really changing the lens and landscape for gender equality in this country through innovation, through education, and through access. All key drivers for the type of change that we need to see in terms of moving the dial on gender equality. I'm absolutely delighted for the first in these conversations to welcome Belinda Lofts from Optus. Belinda is the Senior Director of Data Services Engineering and is a trailblazer, a pioneer and a wonderful advocate both for gender equality and innovation and technology. So firstly, Belinda, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm super excited to be having this chat with you tonight.
As are we to have you. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us. And as I said, we really want to focus on understanding a little bit more about your story and your background, because you've had a really interesting background, particularly obviously in the tech and the innovation space, and also in your current role now. So just to set the context for that, I'm sure that our people that are joining us would be really interested in hearing a little bit more about that journey, because you've had some interesting, I think, probably lived experiences, and innovations in your own career as you go. So over to you, Belinda. Love to hear some more.
Thanks, Simone. So a little bit about me. I've always had a passion for technology, and I studied IT at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I graduated in 1999, so I know I'm showing my age now. But the interesting thing about that was it was right on the cusp of Y2K. And that was a real buzz in the industry and a really exciting time. Ended up being a non-event, thankfully. But it did ignite my interest in technology and certainly shaped part of my career in the roles that I selected. And I guess throughout the course of my career, I've had a number of different roles in IT and in networks and across a number of different industries. I've been in mining and finance and insurance and in telco. And I have a real passion for telcos. I find that they're often at the cutting edge of technology. But more importantly, I think the thing that resonates the most with me is that they're about connecting people to technology. And that's something that really I'm interested in, and the reason why I'm at Optus today. So my role at Optus currently is in digital networks, and I lead a team of highly skilled, highly capable network engineers that look after our mobile data core. And that's essentially providing the data services that you use on your mobile devices at lightning fast speeds.
Fantastic. And when you talk about, I lived through the Y2K experience as well. And funnily enough, I was thinking about it recently, and there was so much angst around the fact that once the clock ticked over to 2000, all of a sudden we would be plunged into this digital abyss and nothing would work because all the calendars wouldn't roll over. And so perhaps some of our listeners and viewers this evening actually weren't around for that or didn't have the joy of participating in it. But it was really, I think, probably early on quite a challenge for a lot of people to even understand the implications of that. And as we increasingly become more digitized and we live in a more digital world, what are some of the things that you see in your day-to-day that are really causing more complexity for even the digital generation who have grown up as digital natives with access to technology, for example? So what are some of the things that you're seeing or witnessing in terms of the shape-shifting of tech in Australia?
Yeah, I think that the pace and the speed at which technology advancement happens is so quick. And, you look at even just the mobile devices and maybe what you've had throughout your lifetime and the smartphones that we have today and just the access that we have to information at our fingertips and content, the ability to download, movies and all various types of content and consume it on the go is just amazing. But we know that that access isn't available for everyone. And it's really important that we look at that and we continue to drive adoption of technology and access to the technology as well, because I think it is going to continue to be such a critical component of all of our lives moving forward. But yeah, in terms of, I guess, the technology changes, they have been rapid, and it is very important for me in my role and for my team to always stay ahead of what's coming as well. And I think for Optus, 5G is certainly a big part of that, because it will enable, greater access and speeds to not only enterprises, but to us as individual consumers as well. So it's a really exciting time for the telco industry, and it's a really big, important issue to be discussing. And I think the topic for International Women's Day, I think, is a great topic. I'm really looking forward to some of the conversations that will be had around this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you talked too about, the pace of change. And I think if we look at gender equality and we look at that in comparison to the pace of change for gender equality and, global statistics at the moment and some of the SDG reports that have recently emerged, have kicked the can down the road some, 200 years plus in terms of achieving gender equality. So I suppose what I'm keen to understand and learn from in terms of the tech space is, where does that, that acceleration and how do we accelerate the pace of gender equality? And what role do you think that innovation may or may not play in that? Interested in that lens around how technology can perhaps help us all hasten the pace towards gender equality.
Yeah, if I reflect on the STEM industry and technology industry in general, I think that the innovation side will be critical for us to continue to advance, and then the access also. So, engaging early and regularly with women and with girls that are at school, talking about the options of education in the STEM field, showcasing women that have very engaging and successful careers in STEM, I think is super important. And I think that will continue to help us accelerate, get more women into these STEM fields and get greater equality. I think at a local level for me, what's important in my role is making sure that I mentor women, and make myself available to be mentoring women, calling out biases if I see them and as they occur during work. I think at a local level, they're really important. And then I think at organizational levels, looking at programs that we can embed, like Women in Leadership, which will help bring forward the pipeline of female talented leaders into the future, are super important. But I get that that's only talking the tip of the iceberg of what we could do to accelerate, and innovation and bringing together, diverse groups of people to really think about opportunities of using digital technology to help us move that forward would be fantastic.
Absolutely. I think you touched on something that's quite interesting, because we hear a lot about women in STEM, or not enough women in STEM, and encouraging young girls to study STEM-related subjects. And I think if we look at the stats, I think currently there's about 70% of people in STEM are women. So, and yet I increasingly come across incredible young girls and young women who are really interested in this space. And so, I wonder how we ungender STEM to a certain extent. So how do we get more women in the space? Because it's not a peculiar skill set that only men can participate in, and obviously women are very good in this space. So I'm really interested what sort of advice or call outs could we give to particularly young women and girls who are interested in this space, and in terms of how they might develop or approach a career in this space, because there's so much happening and it's so exciting. I wonder why the uptake isn't there, and I know there's lots of reasons, but I'm interested in your sort of personal experience about what drove you to, or what piqued your interest to get into this space in the first place.
Yeah, I think for me, early on when I was younger, it was games and things that I was playing at home online, and having that latest technology, that latest Nintendo and things like that. That really started to pique my interest in technical fields. And I grew up with two sisters, so gender wasn't really much of a discussion. I could do anything that I wanted to do really in my household as well. So I never saw any limitations to moving into a technical role and into a technical field. And I think it is really important that we're having those conversations, and people are seeing, if you can't see it, you can't be it. Seeing and showcasing leaders in the STEM field, and really taking that out to a number of different places, so that the younger girls can see that they can have a successful career. I think one of the interesting things that I came across recently as part of my role, and the launching of 5G, was really looking at gamers in Australia, and how gamers, looking at the gender diversity of gamers. And there was one particular study which was that we utilised internally to look at the opportunity for gamers, and the stats showed us that I think it was 49.9% of gamers in Australia, of the 12.8 million out there, were female. So that means that there are a lot of females engaging in technology, and they are using it for recreation activities and downtime. So it's really about tapping into that. We know that they can use the technology. We know that they're interested in the technology. Now we just need to show them that they can have these careers that really engage as well.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? I mean, when you talk about, particularly, anything in this space, but when you look at gamers, and when you look at that almost parity around, gamers. So, and I wonder what's the key to success in that space, in terms of, is it because, equal participation, able to enter, play, compete, whatever that looks like in a gamer's life, is gaming almost degendered? And yet probably not. I don't know. So maybe a question for you. It's obviously I'm not a gamer, so I don't know, but I think it's fascinating.
I know, and I'd love to have the answer to that question as well. Unfortunately, I haven't really unpacked that in any detail. But I think, the interesting thing is as well that we've all engaged with technology very differently throughout the course of the pandemic as well. And I think that in itself may have sparked people to look to digital or online channels for their recreation during that period. And maybe that has influenced the results. But I think, let's capitalize on that, and let's look at how we can continue to grow women in STEM fields, because we know that they're interested in it, and we know that they can engage with it, and they're wanting to engage in it as their pastime. So it's exciting.
It is, and I think it's also a bit of it's almost like a flick of the switch, because we hear so much about women not being in STEM, and women not being accessible or not staying in that space, and yet you've got this whole cohort of gamers who are absolutely engaged. So that's fascinating in and of itself. Sorry, I've just gone off on a little tangent.
Look, I probably would add, I'm not certainly trying to gloss over the fact that we still need to do a lot in this space, and cracking the code and using innovation and technology to look at gender equality is still super important in the STEM field. But I just thought that was an interesting stat to share, and a good conversation starter potentially, for people to look at some of those positive aspects and how we can really tap in and leverage on them.
Yeah, because again, there is an assumption, well, there's assumptions about everything, but certainly about gender, that, women aren't participating in, but they are, and they are using it. And I think that's a really unique perspective. So that's fascinating in and of itself. You touched on innovation, and innovation is a word that's a bit like feminism. It's used in a lot of different ways. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm really interested to hear more from you. When you hear innovation, or when you hear people speak about innovation, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I think, one thing and a quote that has resonated with me is, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that is really, I think, to the heart of innovation, which is, let's get in, generate some ideas, collaborate, and look for opportunities to solve problems. So I think innovation for me is really about being purpose-driven on what you're trying to achieve, but bringing together a collection and a diversity of ideas to the table to really solve for some of those challenges or problems that you're trying to work through. So I think in a nutshell, that's how I'd answer that question.
Yeah. No, well, it's interesting as well, because I was speaking to someone recently about human-centered design, and she made this fabulous comment to me, and she said, well, it depends the human you're designing for, right? So again, with innovation, and gender isn't the only lens. We talk about intersectionality, we talk about spirituality, sexuality, all those things that, humans are multidimensional. So how does that reflected in the innovations that are available? And or is it just the way people interact? So again, that's, I mean, I don't know if there's actually a question in there, but I think it's fascinating that, as you pointed out, people use technology different ways and at different times, and so I think that design principle of how do you design, do you design for women, or do you just design the most innovative, amazing technology, and then people come and play? It's that whole kind of, how does that work? I mean, interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, interestingly at Optus, we do run a number of internal hackathons, and one of the hackathons we did run was targeted at looking at our women customers, and what we could provide to them in terms of helping with their health and fitness, helping with their professional profiles online, helping with safety. And it was really bringing together people to look specifically at some solutions that we could offer in that space. And I think there is a role to be played in looking at customer segments and customer groups, and really looking at how we can tailor solutions and services for them. So I think there's certainly a place for that, and innovation is where those great ideas will come from.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to be a little provocative here, because we know that innovation, technology, and those, the great big ideas aren't necessarily the panacea to all things that ail us and the challenges that we have. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. And, I don't want to focus on the negative, because I think we kind of do that a lot, but really, so, how then, there are limitations on tech and what it can afford us, and obviously limited by those both who use it, those who adopt it, and those who create it. I'm just wondering if you've had any examples where you've seen that happen, and yet engineers have this wonderful way of looking at a problem and solving it, which is fabulous. But so I'm just wondering if there's any examples that you've experienced in your career where you've thought, maybe we could do that better, or maybe there's a different lens to it. I think sometimes, do we all get so absorbed in the tech that we kind of forget the purpose sometimes? I think you started earlier on talking about purpose and innovation. So just interested in if you've got examples of things that maybe haven't worked, and things that we continue to refine in terms of the tech and innovation space.
I think at the heart of it, starting with the purpose is certainly where it needs to be. And I'm just trying to recall. I'm sure I've got examples, but I'm just trying to recall, what some of those would be. But I guess, not trying to avoid the question, I think really making sure that we're clear on what we're trying to achieve is super important before we go out and build solutions. And it's core to everything that I know that we do at Optus as well. So we're very clear on what our purpose is, and making sure that we're driving that through any of our solutions, right to the end products that we deliver as well. I might have to pause on that and maybe come back to you if we've got.
No, that's all good. I'm sure there are questions and comments also from our viewers that we can also share after this as well. I suppose just I know that we're sort of getting to the end of our time together, but I think I've had a wonderful experience in my career of having some amazing female role models and mentors, and people that I've looked up to and aspire to be like one day. Still haven't quite got there, but hey, I'm a work in progress, like we all are. And I just wondered, Belinda, if there's some examples of people that who you really looked up to or look up to as innovators. You don't necessarily have to name them, but what were the things that you took away from them that have probably given you courage or inspiration, or kept you aligned to your purpose around how your career and what you'd like to achieve?
Yeah, look, I could talk about this topic for quite a while, and for me, I think there are a number of innovators that I can recall quite clearly, and just some of the qualities, I guess, and the aspects that really resonate with me, and have probably shaped me into the type of leader I am today as well. Is a lot around bringing together of ideas and really collaborating. Certainly through execution, it's all around being resilient and persistent, and really continuing, I guess, to drive it, not letting it go, wanting it to come to life, I think is really super important. And then I guess, more recently, I listen to a lot of different sort of podcasts and things like that, and you pick up these little nuggets of what people do and how they do things differently. And I think trying to bring them into my day-to-day working life and career is super important to me. I had the opportunity quite recently to listen to an interview from Professor Catherine Green, and she was from Oxford University, and she was quite instrumental in the delivery of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, what really resonated with me was just, solving for such a large, complex problem and how quickly they needed to get that vaccine out and the innovation required around that. And of course, it was a STEM field. So I was really fascinated, by solving such a large global problem. So, it's just about immersing myself in it and continuing to grow and develop myself as well. But I think if I resonate on some of those key qualities, it'd be around collaboration and also that resiliency to actually see things through.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Belinda. Yeah. We have got a question, which is really interesting. We've got lots of questions, and that the chat's been really quite interesting. But there's a question just seeking some comments or thoughts on the importance of inclusion to identify the role that people with disability, or disabled women in tech, and the role that they might play. Because again, if we talk about inclusion and the intersectionality, obviously that the world of technology can also marginalise groups of people, including those with disability, from full participation. So I'm interested in what your thoughts are on that, and how we could look at inclusion more broadly in tech.
Yeah, it's a really important question, and I think just talking off the top of my head, looking at some of the software that's developed that it would allow a level of inclusion, for someone that is, a text-to-speech software that would allow someone to participate in a tech role in a tech field. All of that software is there. So it's about how do we actually bring that to life to enable someone that with potentially a disability that wants to be involved in tech. I think it's a really important topic. And one that we should be exploring a lot further.
Yeah. And I know that there's lots of work being done by some amazing groups around that. And I think, again, if we talk about inclusion around all those dimensions of being a human, we need to obviously design and solve for that as well. And we can't sort of just do it in a homogenistic way. So fascinating, and still so much to learn and so much to talk about. But I feel like we're probably come to the end of our time together. Belinda, you and I could chat for hours. So I just wanted to thank everybody that's joining us. Thank you, parents, and being a mentor for those young women and men who come behind you and really are obviously older. I'm more and more perplexed by technology, but hopefully I'll manage my way through. But I also wanted to just also mention to those who are viewing us this evening that if you have shared questions, if there are things you'd like to hear more about around gender inclusion, around the nexus between innovation and technology, obviously we'll be talking about this more in the lead up to International Women's Day in March next year. And also we'll be sharing some of the responses to your questions online as well, so that we will actually be addressing some of those questions that quite literally we've run out of time for this evening. But watch this space, lots of great things happening. And if you'd like to register your interest to be involved in International Women's Day, there's a little thing that's popped up now. Look at that, amazing. So our tickets go on sale soon. If you want to register your interest, we'd love you to come and celebrate with us and hear more about the power of technology to really crack the code for a gender equal future. And Belinda, on behalf of all of us at UN Women and the amazing work that you do every day, thank you. And thanks for taking time out of your evening to spend time with me and with us and the viewers and the audience to talk some more about that. So I really appreciate your time, and thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.